Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 61, the WordPress Tonic live show. All about using WordPress today as a SaaS, how freelancers get up and running and up the food chain and make money. And of course, we're going to talk about how to get that WordPress site really fast. Jonathan, take it away, introduce the panel.
Oh, we've got a great panel this month. We've got two excellent guests. I'd like to first introduce Jake Goldman, CEO of 10up. Would you like to introduce yourself, Jake?
Sure. So I'm, just because we've made it incredibly confusing, technically I'm the president and founder of 10up. Not to take anything away from my esteemed colleague John, who's our CEO. I started 10up about 4.5 to 5 years ago, and we're a 125-person team that predominantly focuses on implementations with WordPress. And what else can I say about me?
It's great to have you on, Jake. You're a great member of the WordPress community, and a lot of your members contribute a lot to WordPress. I'm really pleased to welcome also Thomas Griffin, CTO of Option Monster. Like to introduce yourself, Thomas?
Sure, yeah. Thanks again for having me this evening. I've been around here in the WordPress space for a while, and Optin Monster is part of the Awesome Motive family, where we predominantly build WordPress products and sell WordPress products. And then we also run WP Beginner, the largest free WordPress resource site. And so I keep my time busy managing all the technical aspects of all of those projects.
Oh yeah, busy man, Thomas, a great WordPress developer, and I read your blog quite often. Like to introduce yourself, Sally?
Certainly. My name is Sally Getch. My business is WP Fangirl, and I am the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup, and I'm busy with some client sites and looking forward to going to WordCamp Los Angeles this weekend.
So am I. It should be a great WordCamp. Like to introduce yourself, David?
Yeah, I'm David Laeta. I'm the founder of Orange Plus Media, WordPress development. I've been spending way too much time lately getting prepped for WordCamp Orlando since I finally put tickets up. Trying to think, that's pretty much all I've been doing lately. Setting up for WordCamp.
Yep, sure. Thanks, David. Like to introduce yourself, John?
Absolutely. My name's John Locke, and I'm an independent web developer from Sacramento, California, doing business as Lockdown Design.
Oh, thanks. Right, my great panel. The first subject...
And I'm Bill Conrad, the wizard. Huh.
Oh, I forgot to mention the wizard. All right. Our first topic, I'd like to discuss, using WordPress as a SaaS. You did a great presentation, Thomas. I think it was WordCamp Baltimore. Hopefully I got that right. Where you did a great presentation. So maybe you can lead about, what was the things you learned about trying to use WordPress, the things you learned and the challenges. Maybe you could kick off, Thomas.
Sure. So for those of you that do not know, Optin Monster originally started out as a WordPress plugin back in September of 2013, and it grew pretty quickly, and pretty quickly became the most popular lead generation and pop-up solution inside of WordPress, and we began to get more and more inquiries to use it outside of WordPress. So we made the decision in October of last year to transition over to a SaaS platform, software as a service, and we decided that we would use WordPress as the application backend. So we completed that transition back in May, and have been running it successfully since then with little to no hiccups. So that's kind of the background of what it's like. Just an example of the scale of what Optin Monster has done. In August, we served 1.3 billion API requests over the month. Right, so that's a lot of API calls to WordPress. I haven't done the math, but that's a lot per second. And that's straight API calls to load data for an opt-in that will then be loaded on a site. That does not include different conversion calls to actually process lead data or users on the site actually building and doing things. So it's strictly API calls. So that's a ton of requests. that's a lot than the majority of most any WordPress site would ever see. And so because of that scale, we had some unique challenges that we had to address. Mainly, we already had an established user base, so it's not like we could just experiment a little bit and iterate with our platform. We knew as soon as we launched this, we would have to be scaling millions of requests a day. And so first we turned to Pagely. So Pagely is our hosting partner that helped us build the architecture behind that so that it could scale. It's all built on Amazon's web services platform. And, we have load balance setups. We have dedicated databases and dedicated caching layers. We use Redis for everything. So it's very, very cache heavy. We do our best to try to hit 99.99% cache hits. And that way you can scale. Because if you're just hitting PHP all the time, there's no way you're going to be able to scale. Right? You can't. There's no way you can get API requests consistently, 50 milliseconds or less. You have to hit it up at the network and server level. So we have Nginx that we use with that, and Nginx caching that we complement with Redis, and that does a very good job of scaling. And then we have custom purge requests and things built whenever opt-ins are saved, anything is done, so it purges those routes that are dynamically built. That way we kind of have on-demand updating and everything, and that helps us scale too. We have ability to do custom flushes as we need to. And as far as using WordPress to handle the routes, we used a little bit of a different approach, and I wrote a little bit about this back about how we had to get a little bit creative with API endpoints, because WordPress itself, when it was originally conceived, was not built as an application framework. It's just built as a blog so that you can have something to manage your content and then a way to actually present that. And there's really no separation of those concerns, right? In the WordPress scope of things, the content, the data, the presentation, and all the things that happen in between are all meshed together. And one of the ways that we had to get around this was we needed to find out a way to try to get the data before anything with presentation started to happen. So we didn't want any type of presentation or any of that to be interfering. We didn't want any extra plugins or anything like that. WordPress is nice because you have plugins that do all these things for you. They're not great when you're trying to figure out how to scale API requests. And so what we ended up coming up with was a must-use plugin, right? So basically when a must-use plugin is loaded, you have the bare bones of WordPress loaded into the application loaded. That way you can run things like queries, you have all of your user API set up, your meta API set up, so that way you can query the database directly. And then we kind of usurp what stuff should actually load on the page. When plugins are retrieved, it uses the get option, the option API, and we filter that. We filter the option before it returns to us, and we check for specific routes. We use the Slim router, and we check for specific routes, and when it matches one of those routes, we say, okay, we only want this particular plugin to load, and that's kind of our API handler. So that's kind of our REST implementation of handling each route itself. So it handles the data, it'll query the database, and then it'll send back the appropriate JSON data and exit before anything else in WordPress has time to load, right? You don't even get to the plugins loaded hook, right? So it happens very, very early on in the life cycle. In order that when you don't have a cached hit, you're not having to wait 2, 3, 4 seconds, for an actual API call. The speed is significantly reduced when you limit it to just the bare bones of WordPress and one plugin to do your work.
Yeah. So I understand that. I just want to ask. Oops. See if I know what I'm doing. Sorry, it's my fault, folks. I just got to switch this off. Right. Is that better? I think hopefully. Jake, what's your reaction to what Thomas has said? And are you getting more clients looking at the possibility of WordPress as a SaaS platform?
Right. So I mean, Tom's explanation was technically sound. It makes all the sense in the world to me. I completely agree that if you're going to build WordPress at high scale, you have to figure out cache, and more cache. That's a general truth of PHP, even with newer technologies like Hip Hop VM and others that are trying to mitigate that. The truth is, you can either spend a fortune going wide and probably still have problems, or you have to introduce things like Redis, which is a very modern approach. In terms of using WordPress as a SaaS, I mean, to me, when you're talking about WordPress, you're talking about using it as a SaaS, to me, you're just talking about a set of tools. It's like asking if you can make a SaaS product out of PHP. Of course you can, right? You have the full power of the programming language available to you. WordPress helps you by giving you a suite of common functionalities and common helpers and common logic around caching that you don't get for free with PHP, so it can be a nice layer on top of that to build a SaaS platform. I can't say that client-wise we've ever helped someone build a SaaS where the SaaS is running WordPress. We've worked with many customers that have many of our own products which plug into WordPress as a SaaS. So we have a SaaS product that is fairly publicly known, that is push-up, that does not run WordPress in the back end. We do use WordPress for key authentication. We use WordPress and Easy Digital Downloads to handle sort of the authentication rights level, but everything below that is purely coded at a PHP and server configuration level. We have other internal, more enterprise-facing SaaS products, like a hosted version of Elasticsearch, which, again, there are nice integrations with WordPress, but we don't end up using it under the hood. So I guess my short answer is I'm totally on board with everything you said. I absolutely think we can use WordPress for the right kind of SaaS product. We don't personally do much of that. Right. Yeah, but I think it's a perfectly viable approach for the right kind of product.
Yeah, I thought it was just a really interesting thing. Just got my own SaaS, and we discussed it when I last saw you, Jake. And I agreed with you when you said that, for the right business, publishing, documentation. But I thought Thomas's presentation was really interesting because it's not exactly publishing; it's a area that's quite stressful. So, David. Have you heard people looking at using WordPress in not a publishing, but looking at it as providing where they would be looking at some other technology and they're actively looking at WordPress as a SaaS? Have you spoken or heard of any, David?
So the crowds that I run in are... I'm trying to think of a nice way to say that the type of developers who need to demonstrate, their knowledge and skill in whatever the newest, biggest thing is. Can't think of a good, polite way to say it. So basically, people who just need to come up with some way to say that, their technology is better than yours, and here are the many reasons why. So admittedly, get a lot of WordPress hate when it comes to these things when I hear this. I'm excited by the possibilities of being able to do things in a way that I already understand well, in a way that that already gels with what I'm doing on a daily basis, and that I can wrap my head around easier than going out and learning new tools all the time. But I can't think of besides the people that that you would already think about, like what Happy Tables is one I'm thinking of off the top of my head. Optin Monster. I'm trying to think of other ones that are I believe one of the guys from Human Made just put out something called Nomad Base. I just saw that the other day. That's using the REST API and that's using WordPress's backend. So these things look pretty cool, but I can't say that I've seen like a groundswell of people suddenly going, "This is what I'm going to start using." Maybe the time hasn't come yet, or maybe they're still working on something else. I mean, I don't know, Thomas, do you have a reason specifically that WordPress was chosen as a backend? Like, was it that was the technology stack that you guys were already used to working with? It didn't have a lot of porting over to do from the original Optin Monster plugin, or was there something else?
Well, for us, I'm a very big fan of launch, iterate, and improve. And because OptinMonster was already a WordPress plugin, we already had a familiar data format in using WordPress. So the amount of time that we saved because we stuck with that similar, taking it from a plugin that's, standalone, WordPress installs, and being able to do that.
Keep on going. They'll get back.
Had some feedback there. Taking it from the WordPress plugin itself and then putting it into the actual platform made the data portability that much easier. Our team is already familiar with WordPress, and for us to go out, not that I don't know PHP. I love Laravel. I love all the things about Laravel. Love using Laravel. But for us, that's a big paradigm shift in our company. If we were to go out and try to find a particular type of developer, and then we're going to have, in terms of that, one of the things that happens when you build custom solutions like this is you typically take on a lot of technical debt because it's a custom implementation, right? And so now you've built it, now you have to constantly maintain it, now you have security updates, you have a lot of things 4 or 5 years down the road, you've got a lot of junk that you have to maintain, and you beg the person that built it not to leave, right? Because you've got no clue what they've done. So at least with WordPress, it gets consistent updates, consistent security things, and it's an easy base for people to start from. So it's not like we've gone in and built anything crazy with it on top of it. We've just utilized an infrastructure, and like Jake said, we've utilized the tools that WordPress provides. And for me, it provides an easy way in if I hire more developers, if I hire more people to get them familiar with the system, so they know WordPress and it's easy to get them plugged in and using it. We don't have to worry as much about the technical debt of custom systems. The longevity of it, is much better for us in that sense. And then, I guess that's the long answer. The short answer is we were all WordPress people, so we weren't about to go and try to do something else and royally screw it up.
Yeah. Hey, that's great. I just want to ask Sally. So Sally, I was in Las Vegas and I'm hearing more and more WordPress commercial plugin providers. They're looking at the SaaS model. And I think that a lot of commercial plugins are going to go down that model. What do you think, Sally?
Don't know what people are doing. This has been an interesting discussion. First of all, yay Pagely. They're the first sponsor we ever had, and continued to be our sponsor at the meetup. And it's great that they were able to work with you to manage that load. But hearing you describe what it took to make it possible to hold up under that kind of onslaught makes me wonder, why anybody would choose WordPress as an application framework. And I think, you answered that in terms of, well, it's what you knew, and there would be, you've got some hoops to jump through to make WordPress work on the one hand, and on the other hand, you would have hoops to jump through to either learn the skills or hire someone with the skills to create something that didn't. But, it has always seemed to me like using WordPress as an application framework was kind of a case of when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But I think that
you're breaking up a little bit there. I think go on to go on to John. So John, what's your experience in people looking at WordPress for SaaS?
Sorry. I haven't run into anyone personally that is looking at using WordPress as a SaaS. Mostly, it's people still looking at it, as a regular website. And I think that Jake brought up some good points that in order to use it at scale, there is a lot of things that need to be done to use it as a back end, as Thomas has done. And I would like to know, ask either Thomas or Jake, where do you think WordPress needs to go in order to use it, to have it be a viable option as a application framework in the future, like in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. What about you, Jake? Can you answer that first, Jake?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. I mean, my first reaction, I'm thinking about it, I don't know that I have a great off by the seat of my pants answer. I mean, the simple answers are the things we're doing with JSON APIs, the things we're doing that focus on endpoints and headless instances, and the things we're already doing in performance. We're focusing on the right things to make it robust as a platform. I also kind of feel like it's the wrong question. It's sort of like asking what a tool that I think of as predominantly built to be a platform, I wouldn't just say for publishers, but for content delivery and content centricity, asking what it means to make it a great application framework sometimes strikes me as a non sequitur question, right? It's kind of like asking what would it take to make Microsoft Office a great, sequel to Halo, right? Like there are things you can do to WordPress that we are doing that where the use case of WordPress is relevant, you can do things that bleed over into application framework. So for example, when we're talking about SaaS, one of the things that's sort of missing in the conversation is all SaaS really means is that it's a hosted service, right? So if your WordPress.com is technically a SaaS product, right? I think we'd all agree WordPress is probably the right product to run the WordPress.com SaaS, right? Happy Tables to me makes a lot of sense because you're fundamentally dealing with publishing and creating content. You're just doing it hosted somewhere else instead of hosting it yourself. Human Made, if they wanted to, I'm sure could release Happy Tables as a plugin, right, or a module for WordPress. It doesn't have to be hosted, right, to serve as a SaaS. In terms of an application, in terms of like it being a great application endpoint, it can do it, right, as Thomas said, you can set it up because you have the full power of PHP, you have all of its helper functions. I think that it probably, if I'm being honest, those kind of instances probably are a case of you are using the tools you know best, right? I don't think like an objective sort of like stand back, look at all of the tools that are out there and build the most performant, lowest cost of infrastructure, lowest cost of overhead tool that you necessarily pluck out WordPress, but that doesn't mean if that's what you know well and you're comfortable with that tool and you feel very confident that you shouldn't use it.
Yeah.
I guess maybe trying to get back to the core question, I guess, again, the short answer is the things we're doing with performance and core, the things we're doing with APIs, right, with JSON and headless instances are all the right things that you need to get to the place where you have a forward-looking application framework-esque platform.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think I'll go on to the next subject now, and I think I will ask David. Have you got any advice, experience about moving up the food chain, basically? How does a developer or a small agency get bigger jobs, more, better paid jobs? And what's your experience around that, David? Do you want to start off with that?
I admit I definitely think probably Jake would probably be better to answer this because he's moved much further up this ladder than I have. But the amount that I've moved up so far has mainly been through continuing education, just making sure that I'm always working on learning something new every day. Finding the right people to work with. So, for instance, I'm terrible at design. That's not what I do. So I found a great partner who is, very good at that, and we were able to work together very well. And we've been working together to the point that, since it's not someone that I'm hiring directly, maybe just contracting out work, but at the very least, I'm not, jumping around between people. I have one person who we've learned each other's different, the way we describe things or the way that we solve problems together, that we don't have to keep relearning that every time. And those things, they're not directly like how to get bigger clients, but they're how to become deserving of bigger clients, I guess, to a point. By that I mean I'm not going to try to say, oh, I've put together a site or two, Clearly, you need me to handle your very large project. When I've had clients come to me with what I would consider larger projects, I've had to demonstrate to them, no, we've built very custom themes. We've built plugins specific to our individual clients, like things that do complex tasks that they can't just go and find on the repo. And that just gives them, I guess, more confidence. And it gives me more confidence to be able to, reach out to them in the first place. Oh, he left.
Rival.
I just noticed.
I'm taking over. Let's talk about Blab. Sally, you take over. I'll make you senior. You're still up in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's right. I would say that, you do have to be able to, you have to be sure that you're able to do the job before you can take on a larger job, because your $5,000 project you might be able to do by yourself, and your $20,000 project is almost absolutely going to be something that you're going to need other people to work on the project with you if you have any hope of completing it, in a reasonable amount of time. And I am a very good web copywriter, but I realized, if I'm spending time doing content writing for these people, I'm not spending the time developing, and that slows the project down. And so I now have somebody else that I work with to do the copywriting, and I have somebody I work with who does design. And so, you need to have your ducks in a row. And then most of my bigger jobs I've gotten by referral from people who routinely work with larger clients and have too much business.
And Jonathan, you're back.
Yeah, I'm back. I've had some technical troubles. Go on, David.
I just want to add on one more thing based on what Sally just said. When you said, making sure that you're able to do a job, obviously I agree there that I want to make sure that I can do it. But I will say for some jobs, I guess for people who are not as strong and, so there's always something new to learn, I want to know that I can do at least 90% of the job up front. And by that I mean is I'm always going to learn something new on the job, and just as long as I'm open to the idea that something's going to go wrong that I didn't expect, or, something I thought would be really easy turns out to be more difficult because of whatever, as long as I'm fairly confident, I'm okay with a little bit of learning on the job. Because it's going to happen regardless.
every project challenges you in some way, and I like that. I like the fact that, this means that I've had to learn this and that, and, figure out how to loop through stuff by, in order by the ACF fields and that kind of thing. But it just has to be, it has to be something where I can conceive of, being able to learn the stuff in time to do it. Yeah, this is my cat, BC.
We have an attack cat. Sally is in trouble. Send out the rest of the squad.
Oh, God, you're going to be attacked by the cat again.
Yeah, I hope not. She strangled me in the headset before.
I just wanted to say to our guests, we have a tradition when Sally's on that she has a group of attack cats. Jake, you came from a more corporate software background, and then you entered the WordPress community. So what's your reflections? You built a very highly successful business. Has it been different to your previous experience? And maybe you can give some tips to people that are trying to grow the business.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've never heard it asked that way. It's
Well, I'm English, Jake, so.
Not just the tone. So every industry, if you want to call WordPress an industry, every vertical has its nuances. There are special things about the WordPress community that are wonderful and special. The ladder that I think David mentioned is one thing that I think is positive about it. There are resources that don't exist in other software communities, so there definitely some things that are unique and have been great about this experience and make me want to stay here. I actually don't think, for the most part, I think I've said this a number of times, I don't think for the most part it's that different, right, than any other industry. I don't think that the business side and the philosophy and the practices and the strategy are that much different from the years that I spent working with Flash, the years that I spent doing government contracting, the years that I spent doing cold fusion CMSs, right, and other platforms. The community is different, and better, in my opinion. But ultimately, the business knowledge around how to look at the finances, right, scaling a project in a company, the strategies that help you be prepared to grow a company, the economic tools and planning and forecasting tools are not particularly different than any other agency. In fact, I think one of the traps that the WordPress community sometimes falls into is thinking that we're more special than we are, right? We're actually, I think, oftentimes a more isolated community. Maybe because it's very comfortable and very nice here in this community, right? But we do think of ourselves as a special flower. In fact, I've talked about that when we talk about things like, WordCamp business tracks, and those kind of, those kind of outings. I don't think, if you want to know and study how to grow a business, how to grow an agency, how to grow a SaaS company, there are wonderful people like Thomas to talk to about how to grow a SaaS company that you should talk to. There are also incredibly, no offense, Thomas, incredibly more successful people, right, that have learned those tools and studied those tools that do not engage in the WordPress community, don't go to WordCamps, or never speak at a WordPress, right, business talk, or business camp. And I do think we need to, the community, some of the inner community as a whole can learn a lot from going outside. Going outside to look for help and look for education. I can tell you for sure that the people that I think of in my past in agency and in education who really had the most influence on my knowing how to grow an agency and knowing how to scale a team, which we can talk about, were not people inside a technology vertical industry. Where like when I think of like the 5-6 mentors I've had that were most influential, some of them were before WordPress was a thing, right? But those are the lessons that I apply every day in terms of how to build a company. Did I answer your question, or did I just go off on my own?
I think you made a really good attempt to make you were given a very long-winded question, and you've tried to make intellectual sense of it, Jake. And I'm highly impressed, actually. I always am, Jake, of your intellect.
I managed to say some words in response to some words you said.
Hey, quick question, Jake, and others. What's the marketing? Jonathan's got some good products out there. I've watched him. He's got really 5 separate products. You may not know that. But what is the best way to market? You have to market, and you have to budget for market. Oh, Jonathan disappeared. I started talking. Interesting, but he'll listen to this. But all of you, marketing is so critical. Now, it's different for your own agency as opposed to having a SaaS product, which is, a lot bigger distribution. Jake, how do you guys market?
So I think that the best marketing is driven by relationships and thought leadership, right? So I would say the predominant way that Tenet markets is through the lens of number 1, relationships, and number 2, brand awareness and visibility. So our best opportunities come from relationships that we have with agencies that know nothing about WordPress other than it's a great CMS. In terms of how to build it, they come from product platform partnerships, infrastructure and hosting companies, right? They come from relationships where they are capturing, as we are capturing leads, where they need a complementary partner. And then I think secondarily comes from being out there as an authoritative voice and letting people who are looking for that voice discover us. We do almost no we don't do cold calling, we don't do traditional outbound marketing, we don't have opt-in monsters installed right on our site. It's very much a bring the leads through industry leadership and through relationship development and doing good work and getting referrals.
Hey, Thomas, any thoughts along those lines of marketing?
Yeah, I definitely echo what Jake said about thought leadership, and especially for OptiMonster. If you look at the OptiMonster blog, I think you will see that theme throughout our blog. We want to be the industry standard for conversions for anything exit intent lead generation, right? That's part of the marketing, part of our marketing plan. As far as money and budget, we've spent basically nothing No money on actual paid marketing or anything. We're not trying to go out and buy our customers. And the reason behind that is we seek to have a superior distribution platform than anybody else, which makes our cost per acquisition so much lower. And effectively, we have a better business model and better bottom line than any of our competition. As far as the ins and outs of marketing, I can't share everything. I don't want to give away our secret sauce for why OptiMonster has done so well in this particular industry. But definitely thought leadership. The idea of authority. I mean, if you want a buzzword right now, the idea of authority in whatever niche that you're in, definitely is a huge thing to consider. And then just overall, and this is true of any business, for any product, anything that you do. You want to have a superior distribution system, right? Even superior distribution systems can take a mediocre product and they can pound out any other product, right? And having that type of distribution system where that can be successful is a really good, not only good marketing tool, but it's a good just business tool in general.
What do you mean by distribution? Can you give a little bit more detail on that, Thomas?
Yeah. So distribution is essentially the way that you get your product out to customers. And it's all the things that is entailed by that. And so that can be sales, that can be marketing, that can be relationships, that can be brand visibility. It's affiliate sales, partnerships, right? Strategic partnerships. I think you could agree with that word. Strategic partnerships. All of those things, they culminate into your distribution strategy. It's no different than a Kellogg's or a General Mills and their distribution systems that they have to take. They see some little product rising up that seems to be popular, and then they come out with their own, and they either squash the product or force the other product to be bought out by them, right? So, and that's distribution, and that's the power of distribution. Right? It's a really, really powerful business tool.
I want to ask Jake a quick question, then go on to our last subject. Jake, why do you think, obviously you and your team do very high-end custom WordPress development for large companies, and they probably looking at other content management, in the open source. They're probably looking at Drupal, and they're looking at some other systems. Why do you think they decide to utilize WordPress, or what benefits do they think they're going to get from that, Jake?
That's a great question. So the first part of that answer is they don't always, right? And let's not kid ourselves that they don't always. I think the hardest fights that we're in as a company today, and the ones that mean the most to me, in fact, I'm flying out on Monday to go through another one of these, are the ones where they're looking at multiple platforms, sometimes custom and bespoke, sometimes Drupal, sometimes any number of other platforms that are out there, and they're looking hard at their choices. And I would say, even with our best effort, I'll get to what that means in a moment, even with our best effort, I would say 25% of the time or less, we end up being able to convince them that WordPress is the right option for them. And when we do, I'll be a little bit of a downer and say, even when we do, it's oftentimes very clear that part of its winning ability is that it's perceived as a lower cost option, right? It's not because it is so clear that WordPress is superior as a platform for massive enterprise needs than a Drupal or some of these Java-based CMSs we run into, but it seems like it's a more economic choice, which is not really a great place to be if you want to help the platform grow in the industry. I think so. There are a number of things you can emphasize and sell them on. The benefits of being an open source in terms of controlling their destiny, putting aside development costs, long-term cost of ownership, right, on the platform, its pace of iteration, the market share that it has, the ecosystem that you get from that market share, all of which, to be honest with you, matter modestly to those kind of companies and those kind of enterprises. Oftentimes, it's it does get a more clear win, and it's not seeing the lens of being the cheap option. It's because somebody inside that company already has an affinity for the platform. They've seen it be successful somewhere else. Maybe they're a member of the WordPress community or been to some WordCamps and really have that connection. I think the other hard reality, which is something I'm on and off trying to work on with other companies, is let me rewind that sentence for a second. So one of the realities I think in marketing, and it's a fairly cynical thing to say, is people choose the platform based on the efficacy of who's selling it, right? Which is to say, when I think when we win those fights, it has as much to do with how much effort we put into the sale, right? And one of the places where I think we are disadvantaged is when we go up against an expression engine, when we go up against there's a CMS called Brightspot that's publishing in the CMS industry that's Java-based. When we go up against those platforms, we are often dealing with, companies and corporations that have very well-funded marketing arms, that have extremely polished, dedicated, 100% around-the-clock salespeople, right, that sell the platform and do nothing else all day long but focus on how to make their pitch as good as possible to sell the platform. And oftentimes well-connected boards at Adobe, right, and these kind of companies that can make that case. So being long-winded again, I think the short answer is when they choose the platform, it's often because somebody there has already bought into it, or because, frankly, you just do a very good job of putting in the work that it takes to sell them on why it's the right choice for them, and just do the most polished, most impressive demo you can. Like I think 80% of sales in any marketplace, including CMS, is how polished and effective, especially in the enterprise, is how polished and effective your pitch is. So the CMO, right, and the CTO may not know anything about CMS, as it is about the objective merit of the platform that they don't have time to study themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Hey, John, in Sacramento, when you're kind of pitching for work, are you kind of up against other CMSs and, Drupal, Joomla, and people, you've got to kind of sell WordPress, or do people tend it's the other way around with the type of clientele you're doing with?
Mostly I'm targeting specifically people who are already on WordPress and in that ecosystem. I would say in Sacramento, you're going to see competition mostly from .NET or Drupal, mostly with government agencies, because those are the systems that they already have. But there are, definitely WordPress projects out there. I would say mostly you're talking, small, mid-size, and even larger businesses are on it. And it depends. If they're already in that ecosystem, then it's not a problem. But I think there's plenty of WordPress work out there. I think with government agencies or nonprofits, you might have to pitch it more, but usually they've done some research before they come to you. So.
Right. What about you, Sally? What's your experience, when you're pitching against other systems?
Well, I don't think there have been that many cases where it was sort of specifically, this is WordPress competing against Joomla competing against. I mean, if I come to a situation where it seems like this project really might be better handled by Drupal or Joomla, I'm going to say go find a Drupal developer. Here's a reference. But a lot of the people that I work with, they're looking for a good website, and they may be coming from, God help us, Front Page, or one of those website builder tools that they get with their hosting company, or whatever, and either they have no understanding of systems at all, but they know what they want to be able to do, or they're working with the system and they don't like it. There's something that they don't like about it, and that makes them willing to invest in changing platforms.
Right, thanks. I think I'll move on to the last topic, which is how you make WordPress a lot quicker. I'm going to ask David this. What's your experience about dealing with speed issues in WordPress, and how do you deal with that when you're taking over a project or you're advising clients?
I go for the lowest hanging fruits first, because pretty much every client has that has that thing where 20% of their problems are going to solve 80% of their speed issues. So just getting them over that first hump is already a great improvement for most clients at that point. And I'm referring to things like doing an audit over their theme plugins, making sure everything are only making server requests when necessary, trying to see if there are queries that are going crazy and if they can be optimized. And I'm basically referring to a good portion of this work don't even have to touch code to start with to make some of these really low effort, high return changes on. At least that's how I find it with the majority of clients. Beyond that, for my clients, a lot of them is they're at the level that hosting is concerned. Granted, a good portion of my clients come from WP Engine, so I at least can fall back on them to look into anything specifically server related, so I don't have to spend the time on that. Honestly, that's where I spend most of my time.
Right, great. Yeah. Hey, Jake. Obviously, this particular topic was got in front of me because of your colleague Alan Moore and his presentation, and in it, Jake, he was talking about especially plugins, how he still finds a lot of JavaScript requests are in the header, they're not in the footer. That a lot of this is poor plugin, and he doesn't really quite understand why that is. So, did you discuss that with him, and what's your feelings? Is a lot of these problems around hosting and basic plugin coding, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, yes. For plugin coding, for theme coding, generally poor software development. I almost want to caveat the word poor by saying more just lazy software development, right? In the sense that it's not even necessarily that people aren't escaping or writing secure code or following best PHP practices, but there's, I think the speed and performance of browsers like Chrome and, newer versions of other browsers has, especially on the desktop where you're doing most of the development, can sometimes make for lazy development in the sense that you can load in 30 scripts in your header and you don't really notice much of an incremental difference every time you add one. A lot of what Alan's talk goes over are just basic, what seem to me like basic things, but are easy things when you're trying to rush something out the door to gloss over, like if you don't need to load this script on this particular page or in this set of conditions, don't. Right? Like, so for example, classically things like plugins for like shortcodes or whatever in your, or custom editor buttons, right, in your post. If you're not actually loading a video, if you don't actually embed or load a certain type of video in your post, don't cue the script, right? Don't load in the script, right? Whereas I think a lot of sort of lazy development is just like, we'll load the script everywhere, and the few times that it will be needed will work great, and there's not much overhead the other times. And other small things you can do, like taking the time to minify and join together, right? All your scripts and your CSS. So
yeah,
I didn't talk to Alan a lot about it, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for optimization in the plugin layer.
Well, obviously it's one of the enormous strengths of WordPress. The plugin library. It's one of the great attractions to people, but it's also their Achilles heel to some extent as well, isn't it? What about you, Thomas? Was it pure business, or was there also kind of technical reasons why you moved from a plugin setup to a SaaS? Was it pure business, or was there kind of technical issues as well about running it as a plugin rather than going to the SaaS model?
I think it's a little bit of both. Mostly for business. Your WordPress powers a lot of the web. It's 25% of the top, X amount of sites or whatever. So it powers a lot of the web, but that's 75% of the web left that you can't access, right? You just don't have access to because you're limited by your platform. And so, a lot of the decision was moved to business, and our customers asked for it. I mean, we kept having to refund people, and we kept having to turn people away because they couldn't use it on their Shopify site, Magento, or their custom CMS.
Well, the fools, Thomas, they're not using WordPress.
But yes, there were some technical pieces too that made the transition a little bit easier. One in particular is with our email service provider integrations, and just they're typically built in a manner that they don't expect it to be distributed. With PHP 5.3 and all the namespaces and everything with that is awesome, right? We use that internally everywhere, but having something distributed with that it's just, well, WordPress doesn't support that, right? And the lowest common denominator, that means that now we have to shim whatever they built in order to make sure that it works for everybody. And then that with just loading conflicts, and then people not getting their leads generated, performance issues with trying to accurately calculate analytics and impressions. Is just hard, especially when you're on shared hosting providers. They're not built to do that type of analytics reporting. So yeah, there are definitely some technical things that would want us to move over to our own SaaS platform. But I would say the majority of the reason is business.
Oh, great. I'm just going to quickly ask my co-host, the wizard, my rock, when I'm having technical troubles. Have we got any questions, Bill? Any questions at all?
No, I've been checking with Twitter. We had a low flow today. Only a few of us got Twitters out. But that said, before we leave today, we've got about 10 more minutes. People want to know, how can they get a hold of you if they want to email you or find you. So if each of the panel would just give out their contact information, that would be great. And also, what are you doing this week? And I know a few folks are going to WordCamps, Orlando and LA. Is Orlando this weekend?
No, Tampa's this weekend.
It's Tampa.
I'm just giving you all advance notice now.
So, Jonathan, why don't you go through we've got 9 minutes left.
Well, I thought it was short because I think my computer is going to blow up at any minute. I've never had so much technical trouble. No. But there we go. So we know what David's going to be up to. So what about you, Jake? Do you kind of like chill out over the weekend, or is it, you just catch up with the stuff that you just couldn't cope with during the week? Or do you try and chill out?
I would say I try to chill out. I would say there are plenty of weekends where, I don't get ahead of myself, and I do need to probably spend a good several hours just combing through the muck that I didn't get to during the week. I am doing travel and a fairly, I think, important pitch against other platforms on Tuesday, so I'll probably spend some of that time undistracted by everything else that gets my attention during the weekdays preparing.
Can I ask you one quick question, Jake? Reflecting, because how long have you been running 10 Up? Well, you started it?
10 Up, which was February 2011, so somewhere between 4.5 and 5 years now.
If you were talking to Jake 5 years ago, what would be the key bit of advice that you would tell Jake 5 years ago that you know now?
I'm not here to question you because it works out. I never have a good answer to that. It's a good thing I don't have to do many interviews anymore because I've never have good answers to those questions. I think when I think about things that I struggled with 4.5 years ago that seemed to me like things I shouldn't have wasted so much stress and anxiety over, it would really be over dealing with change, and particularly personnel change within the organization, right? So I think I would tell myself, in the spirit of this weekend, I would tell myself to chill out a little bit on stressing over hiring decisions or termination decisions, or letting relationships, not even just in the company, but letting the relationships inside and outside the company that aren't working anymore fade.
Yeah, sometimes you hang on to things that are meant to kind of dissolve, really, aren't they? Yeah. What about you, John? What are you up to? Are you going to LA, or you're staying in Sacramento?
Yeah, skipping LA. I will be at WordCamp in Sacramento. When is
WordCamp in Sac?
November 7th.
November 7th, I think.
Oh, well, we'll be there. We'll be there. What about you?
Awesome.
What about you, Sally? You already told me, but maybe you wanted to tell our audience what you're going to be up to over the weekend.
Right. So I'm going to Camp Los Angeles for the first time, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, it should be great, shouldn't it? We're going to be there, me and the Wizard, and we're sponsoring it as well. What about you, Thomas? Is it your weekends? Do you chill out, or are you just trying to catch up with all the mayhem that you didn't cope with during the week?
I do my best to chill out. I really made that a focus, even the past year. Really trying to chill out and keep business as business, and then focus on my relationship with my wife and my family and other people. So I do my best to try to keep work away when it's not during the week. As far as this weekend, I'm going to a bachelor party weekend in Asheville. My good friend is getting married next month, and so we're going up there this weekend for a bachelor party.
That sounds great. You know, Thomas, you know, you've been involved in a lot of WordPress business and development, and I've read your blog. So, you know, have you got any advice for somebody who's trying to start a plugin, kind of WordPress kind of business through the plugins and themes? Is there anything that comes to mind that you could advise somebody? I know it's a big question, but I just wondered if there's anything that comes to your mind.
Sure. So I believe the question you're asking is if they're wanting to start kind of a product business in WordPress with a plugin, what advice would I give them?
I knew you could understand my jumbled English, Thomas.
Sure. Some of the advice I would give them is done is better than perfect. You don't have all the answers to the questions you think you're solving when you first build it. I guarantee you that your customers will show you that in the very first day of your launch. So just go in with that mindset that you don't know as much as you think you do, right? And humble yourself to be able to be okay with that. You know, some people legitimately have a tough time thinking that. So just humble yourself and remember that done is better than perfect, and focus on getting something launched. There are a lot of people who have a lot of great ideas and 50 things that got started and they never get completed. And so one of the best ways for you to get something launched is to write it down on a piece of paper and write down dates. Sit down and take the time to write out the milestones that you are going to try to meet to launch that. Right? That greatly increases the chances that you'll actually do it. And if you even stick it on your computer and you stare at it every day, it will further increase those chances. So to sum all that up, two things: done is better than perfect, and write down what you want to do.
Oh, so true. Because I'm developing with my developers a ever-expanding SaaS product myself. And Thomas, your words are spot on, actually. I can tell they're based on great experience. Me and the Wizard are going down to Los Angeles. WP-Tonic is sponsoring WordCamp Los Angeles. I think it's going to be a great WordCamp. We're really looking forward to it. I'm not sure if Bill's looking forward to the drive with me, but he's been a great co-host. I just want to really thank the panel, our guests, Jake from 10 Up. You've been fantastic, Jake, and you've been very gracious in joining us. And you're always a fantastic member of the community, and you talk a lot of sense. Thomas, thank you for coming on a short notice. It's been great. David said I should try and he helped. And I'm going to try and get more of the WordCamp people on. But it's been fantastic to learn about your experience with Option Monster. And thanks for the regular panel. You've all been fantastic. And I think it's been unfortunately, I've had some technical issues, but my great co-host has helped out, and it's all gone smoothly.
Here's Jonathan's computer. We need to get him a new one.
All right.
Thanks, Wizard. I really appreciate. Oh God, it's all come out. My secrets are coming out.
He's been putting all his money into his SaaS product.
That's true as well. It's bankrupt.
Well, you're using a MacBook Pro. I mean, what's 3 or 4 years old?
It's 3 years old.
6K modem at least.
Well, that's a good finish. We've got Jonathan laughing.
Right.
That's right. And FYI, everyone out there, I do a lot of shows with Jonathan, and we do a lot of podcasts. And usually he's got great sound. But you're fine now. Who knows what was going on?
I think it was the internet connection. Actually, it's been a bit. The cable company to say that they're not reliable would be a gross understatement.
We are in northern Nevada.
It's a bit some of those relationships that Jake was saying that you need just to let go.
we're on an island on the east side of the Sierras.
I blame WordPress.
If only Hangouts was on WordPress.
All right,
well, I'm going to stop. Stay on. I'm going to stop the broadcast. Aloha, everyone, wave. Everyone's got to wave. When everyone waves, yeah.